The bright summer sun beat down mercilessly on the sprawling parking lot of Pine Valley Mall. Howard, a striking blue and gold macaw with keen eyes and vibrant plumage, perched contentedly on his owner's shoulder as they made their way through the rows of cars. Patricia, a gentle elderly woman who had raised Howard since he was a hatchling, often brought him along on her shopping trips. "Such a beautiful day, isn't it, Howard?" Patricia smiled, reaching up to scratch his head. The parrot preened under her touch, his intelligent eyes scanning their surroundings as they walked. At 72, Patricia found comfort in Howard's companionship. Her husband had passed away 3 years ago, and the spirited macaw had become her closest friend. She'd obtained all necessary permits to bring Howard with her in public spaces, and over the years, he had become something of a local celebrity at the mall. As they approached the mall entrance, Howard's attention was suddenly drawn to something unusual. His head twisted sharply toward a silver sedan parked in a distant corner of the lot. There was something about that car that made his feathers bristle. "What is it, Howard?" Patricia asked, noticing his sudden change in demeanor. But before she could react, Howard spread his wings and took flight, something he rarely did without permission. "Howard!" Patricia called out in surprise, watching as her beloved bird soared across the parking lot. She hurried after him as quickly as her arthritic knees would allow. Howard landed on the roof of the silver sedan, his talons clicking against the hot metal. The windows were rolled up tight, and inside, barely visible through the tinted glass, lay a sleeping infant strapped in a car seat. The temperature inside the vehicle was rising dangerously in the summer heat. The parrot's natural instincts, honed by years of living among humans, told him something was terribly wrong. He began to screech loudly, his powerful voice carrying across the parking lot. "Help! Help! Baby! Help!" he called out. Words from his extensive vocabulary that suddenly held vital importance. Patricia finally caught up to the car, out of breath from her hurried walk. "Howard, what has gotten into you?" she began. But then she saw what had caused his distress. Through the window, she could see the baby's face turning red from the heat. "Oh my God!" Patricia gasped, immediately pulling out her phone to dial 911. Howard continued his loud calls, drawing the attention of nearby shoppers who began to gather around the vehicle. "There's a baby locked in the car," someone in the growing crowd called out. The commotion attracted the attention of Tyler, a mall security guard who had been patrolling the lot. He ran over to assess the situation, his radio already in hand. "Stand back, please," Tyler commanded, quickly taking control of the situation. He tried the door handles, but the car was locked tight. The baby inside had begun to stir, small whimpers audible even through the closed windows. Howard, still perched on the roof, continued his urgent cries. "Hot! Baby! Help!" His voice grew more insistent as he hopped from roof to hood, his distress evident in every movement. Time seemed to crawl as they waited for emergency services to arrive. The crowd had grown larger, with some people holding up shopping bags to provide what shade they could for the vehicle. The temperature inside the car was climbing rapidly, and the baby's whimpers had turned into weak cries. Finally, the distant wail of sirens cut through the humid air. Within minutes, emergency responders arrived on the scene. They quickly assessed the situation, and seeing the baby's deteriorating condition, made the decision to break one of the car's windows. The sound of breaking glass caused Howard to flutter briefly into the air before landing back on Patricia's shoulder. They watched as paramedics carefully extracted the infant from the sweltering vehicle. The baby, a little girl no more than 6 months old, was immediately wrapped in cool, damp cloths and examined by the medical team. "Her core temperature is elevated Taitwain, but we got to her in time," one of the paramedics announced, bringing sighs of relief from the assembled crowd. If it wasn't for that parrot raising the alarm when he did. As if understanding the gravity of what he'd done, Howard puffed up his chest feathers and let out a soft, satisfied chirp. Patricia stroked his head proudly, tears in her eyes. "Good boy, Howard. Such a good, clever boy." The police arrived shortly after they, and in the midst of their investigation, they located the baby's mother inside the mall. Hannah, a young woman in her early 20s, came running out in tears, her shopping bags forgotten inside the store. "I only meant to be gone for a minute," she sobbed, watching as her daughter was loaded into an ambulance for precautionary observation. I thought she'd be okay. I didn't realize. The police officers spoke with Hannah sternly but compassionately, explaining the dangers of leaving children unattended in vehicles, even for short periods. The incident would be reported to Child Protective Services, but it was clear that Hannah's remorse was genuine and deep. As the crowd began to disperse and the emergency vehicles prepared to leave, Hannah approached Patricia and Howard, her eyes red from crying. "Your bird, he saved my baby's life. I can't ever thank you enough." Howard, who normally showed little interest in strangers, turned his head toward Hannah and spoke softly. "Baby safe now." The simple phrase, delivered with perfect clarity, brought fresh tears to Hannah's eyes. The local news media, arriving too late to witness the actual rescue, gathered around Patricia and Howard, eager to interview the heroic Parrot and his owner. But Patricia gently declined immediate interviews, knowing that Howard was tired from the excitement and heat. As they finally made their way back to their car, Howard nestled against Patricia's neck. She couldn't help but marvel at the day's events. Her companion, who usually spent his mall visits charming children with his vocabulary and singing "Happy Birthday," had proven himself to be so much more than just a clever pet. The incident would mark the beginning of an unexpected chain of events that would change not only Patricia and Howard's lives, but also touch the hearts of countless others in ways they could never have imagined. But for now, as the sun began its descent in the summer sky, Howard was content to simply be a loyal friend who had done what needed to be done. The morning after the incident at Pine Valley Mall dawned with an unexpected knock at Patricia's door. Still in her morning robe and halfway through her first cup of tea, she opened the door to find Hannah standing there, holding her baby daughter carefully in her arms. "I hope it's not too early," Hannah said hesitantly, shifting her weight from one foot to the other. I just needed to see you both again, to properly thank you." The baby, looking healthy and alert, gurgled softly in her mother's arms. Patricia's face softened into a warm smile. "Not at all, dear. Please, come in." She opened the door wider, gesturing toward her modest living room where Howard was perched in his favorite spot by the window. Hannah followed Patricia inside, her eyes immediately drawn to Howard. The magnificent macaw turned his head toward them, his intelligent eyes focusing on the baby. "Baby safe," he declared, repeating his words from the previous day. "Yes, Howard, thanks to you," Patricia said proudly, offering Hannah a seat on the floral-patterned sofa. "Would you like some tea?" "That would be lovely, thank you," Hannah replied, settling down with her daughter. "This is Bella, by the way. I didn't properly introduce her yesterday." As Patricia busied herself in the kitchen, Hannah watched Howard with a mixture of awe and gratitude. The parrot had moved to a perch closer to them, his head tilted curiously as he observed Bella. "I spent all night thinking about what could have happened," Hannah said quietly, her voice catching. "I've always considered myself a good mother, you know, but yesterday I made such a terrible mistake." Patricia returned with the tea, setting it carefully on the coffee table. "We all make mistakes, dear. The important thing is learning from them." Hannah nodded, wiping away a tear. "The social worker is coming to see me today. I'm so scared they'll take Bella away." "Pretty baby," Howard suddenly chimed in, causing Bella to giggle and reach toward him with her tiny hands. "He seems to like her," Patricia observed with a smile. "Howard doesn't usually take to strangers so quickly." She paused, studying Hannah's worried face. "Would you like me to go with you when you meet with the social worker?" Hannah looked up, surprise and hope mixing in her expression. "Would you? I don't want to impose, but having you there, explaining what happened." "Of course," Patricia assured her. "Howard and I will both come. Won't we, Howard?" "Help, baby," Howard agreed, bobbing his head up and down. As they sat talking, Patricia learned more about Hannah's life. She was a single mother, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. Bella's father wasn't in the picture, and Hannah's own parents lived several states away. The previous day, she'd been rushing to buy supplies for Bella before her afternoon shift at the diner, her mind scattered from lack of sleep and worry about bills. "It's not an excuse," Hannah said firmly. "Nothing excuses what I did, but I've been so overwhelmed lately, trying to do everything alone." Patricia reached over and patted Hannah's hand. You don't have to be alone, dear. Sometimes help comes from unexpected places. Howard, as if understanding the conversation, fluttered down to the coffee table. He picked up a small toy that Bella had dropped and carefully handed it back to her, earning another delighted giggle from the baby. Later that afternoon, Patricia and Howard accompanied Hannah to her meeting with the social worker, Ms. Thompson, a stern-looking woman in her 50s, listened carefully as they recounted the events at the mall. Howard's presence added an unusual element to the meeting, but his occasional gentle interactions with Bella seemed to soften the social worker's demeanor. "It's clear that this was a one-time lapse in judgment," Miss Thompson finally said, closing her notebook, "and your immediate remorse and willingness to accept help are positive signs, Miss Carter. We'll be conducting follow-up visits, of course, but I don't see any need for more drastic measures." The relief on Hannah's face was profound. As they left the social services office, she turned to Patricia and Howard. "I don't know how to thank you both. First for saving Bella, and now this. Tell you what," Patricia said, an idea forming. "Why don't you bring Bella over tomorrow? I could watch her while you're at work. It would give me and Howard some company, and you wouldn't have to worry about daycare." Hannah's eyes widened. "Oh, I couldn't ask you to—" "You're not asking. I'm offering," Patricia interrupted gently. "Besides, Howard seems quite taken with her." Indeed, the Parrot had been unusually attentive to Bella throughout the day, seemingly appointed himself as her personal guardian. Every time the baby made a sound, his head would turn toward her, checking that all was well. That evening, after Hannah and Bella had gone home, Patricia sat in her favorite armchair, reflecting on the day's events. Howard flew to his perch beside her, nuzzling against her cheek. "You've started quite something, my friend," she told him softly. "Quite something indeed." What had begun as a dramatic rescue was transforming into something more meaningful, a chance for both Patricia and Hannah to fill the empty spaces in their lives. For Patricia, the prospect of having a baby in the house again brought back memories of raising her own children, now grown and living far away. For Hannah, the offer of support and friendship was like a lifeline thrown to a drowning person. And Howard, the unexpected hero of this story, seemed to have found a new purpose beyond his role as Patricia's companion. His natural protective instincts, which had saved Bella's life, were now focused on watching over both the baby and this budding friendship between two women who needed each other more than they realized. As night fell over the quiet neighborhood, Patricia couldn't help but wonder what changes tomorrow would bring. One thing was certain: their lives would never be quite the same again. As summer progressed, Patricia's home transformed into a sanctuary of joy and laughter. Every morning, Hannah would drop off Bella before her shift at the diner, and Howard would announce their arrival with an enthusiastic, "Baby here, baby here." The arrangement seemed to breathe new life into Patricia's quiet house. She found herself looking forward to each day, planning activities and setting up a small play area in her living room. Howard, ever the attentive guardian, had developed an impressive repertoire of behaviors around Bella. One particularly memorable morning, as Patricia was preparing Bella's bottle in the kitchen, she heard Howard's urgent call. "Watch, baby! Watch, baby!" She hurried back to find Bella attempting to put a small toy in her mouth, with Howard carefully trying to pull it away with his beak. "Thank you, Howard," Patricia said, quickly removing the potential hazard. "You're such a good watchbird." Howard puffed up his chest feathers proudly before returning to his perch above Bella's playmat. From there, he would entertain her with gentle songs and words, causing the baby to squeal with delight at his performances. However, not everything was as perfect as it seemed. Patricia began to notice signs of increasing stress in Hannah. Dark circles under her eyes grew deeper, and her normally cheerful demeanor seemed forced. One evening, when Hannah came to pick up Bella, Patricia finally addressed her concerns. "Hannah, dear, is everything all right?" Patricia asked, as Howard helped entertain Bella by showing off his newest trick, stacking colored rings on a toy pole. Hannah's carefully maintained composure crumbled. "I lost my second job," she admitted, sinking onto the sofa. "The convenience store is cutting back hours, and I don't know how I'm going to make rent this month." Patricia sat beside her, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. "So why didn't you tell me sooner?" "You've already done so much," Hannah whispered, watching as Bella reached for Howard, who gently offered her a soft toy. "I didn't want to be more of a burden." "Nonsense," Patricia declared firmly. "You and Bella are family now. We help family." Those words triggered something in Hannah, and she broke down completely. Between sobs, she revealed the full extent of her struggles: the mounting bills, the threatening letters from her landlord, the impossible choice between buying food or paying utilities. Howard, sensing the distress, flew to Hannah's shoulder and gently preened her hair, something he normally only did with Patricia. "No cry," he said softly. "No cry." Patricia's mind was already working on a solution. Her house had 4 bedrooms, 3 of them empty since her children had moved away. The idea had been forming for weeks, but now seemed the perfect time to voice it. "Move in with us," she said simply. Hannah looked up, startled. "What?" "Move in here," Patricia repeated. "The upstairs bedroom gets lovely morning light, perfect for a nursery. The room next to it could be yours. You'd save on rent, and I would love the company." I couldn't possibly—" "Pretty please," Howard chimed in, using one of his favorite phrases, making both women laugh through their tears. "Think about it," Patricia urged. "No pressure, but the offer is there." That night, after Hannah and Bella had gone home, Patricia sat in her garden, watching the sunset with Howard. "We're doing the right thing, aren't we?" she asked her feathered friend. Howard ruffled his feathers and replied with what seemed like perfect understanding: "Family help family." The next few days were tense as Hannah wrestled with the decision. Patricia could see her struggling with pride and independence versus practical needs and Bella's well-being. Howard Gann, for his part, seemed to increase his efforts to charm both mother and daughter, showing off new words and tricks whenever they visited. One morning, Hannah arrived earlier than usual, her eyes bright with unshed tears but her chin held high. "If the offer still stands," she began hesitantly, "I'd like to accept." Patricia's face broke into a warm smile. "Of course it stands. When would you like to move in?" "My landlord gave me until the end of the week to leave," Hannah admitted. "I'm behind on rent, and he's not willing to wait anymore." "Then we'll start moving you today," Patricia declared firmly. "Howard and I don't have any other plans, do we?" Howard, who had been listening intently, flew to the window and called out, "Help family, help family!" The next few days were a whirlwind of activity. Patricia enlisted the help of her neighbor's teenage sons to move Hannah's furniture. The boys were initially skeptical about taking orders from a Parrot, but Howard proved to be an excellent supervisor, calling out, "Careful," and "Watch step," as they carried boxes and furniture up the stairs. As Hannah's belongings found their place in Patricia's home, something magical began to happen. The house, which had felt too big and empty since Patricia's husband passed away, began to feel alive again. Bella's toys mixed with Howard's perches and toys, creating an odd but charming blend of baby and bird paraphernalia. However, not everyone was as pleased with the new arrangement as they were. One afternoon, as Patricia was tending to her garden with Howard supervising from a nearby branch, her next-door neighbor, Mrs. Reynolds, peered over the fence with a disapproving frown. "I heard you've taken in that young woman and her baby," she said, her tone dripping with judgment. "Rather risky, isn't it, taking strangers into your home at your age?" Before Patricia could respond, Howard swooped down to perch on the fence, fixing Mrs. Reynolds with his most imperious stare. "Family," he declared firmly. "Family help family." Mrs. Reynolds retreated, muttering under her breath about senile old women and their noisy birds, but Patricia just smiled and scratched Howard's head affectionately. "You tell her, my friend, family helps family indeed." The transition to living together wasn't without its challenges. The first few weeks brought a series of adjustments as 3 generations, plus one very opinionated Parrot, learned to share space. Hannah's early morning shifts meant quiet pre-dawn preparations, while Bella's schedule demanded flexibility from everyone. Howard, ever adaptable, quickly established himself as the household's unofficial alarm clock. "Wake up, baby hungry!" he would call out at the first sound of Bella stirring, often before the baby monitor could catch her movements. One particular morning, about a month into their new living arrangement, Patricia awoke to find Hannah in the kitchen, slumped over a cup of coffee, her waitress uniform wrinkled and her eyes red from crying. "What's wrong, dear?" Patricia asked, while Howard flew to Hannah's shoulder, his usual perch when he sensed someone needed comfort. "I just got a call from the diner," Hannah whispered. "They're closing down. The owner's retiring, and his children don't want to take over the business. I have 2 weeks left, and then—" She trailed off, the implications hanging heavy in the air. "Oh, sweetheart." Patricia sat down beside her, reaching for her hand. "We'll figure something out." "But I can't keep living here without contributing," Hannah protested. "It's not right." Howard, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly perked up. "Show baby, show baby," he called out excitedly, flying to the window that overlooked the backyard. Patricia followed his gaze and saw what had caught his attention. The community center across the street was putting up a new sign advertising childcare positions. "Hannah, look," she pointed out the window. Hannah wiped her eyes and joined them at the window. "A daycare center. You're wonderful with children," Patricia encouraged. "And you'd be close to home. Why not apply?" The idea took root, and with Patricia's help, Hannah prepared for the interview. They spent hours updating her resume while Howard entertained Bella, his repertoire of songs and tricks keeping the baby enthralled. The day of the interview arrived, and Hannah dressed in her best clothes, freshly pressed by Patricia the night before. As she prepared to leave, Howard flew to her shoulder and straightened her collar with his beak, making her laugh despite her nerves. Good luck," he called as she left, his voice following her down the street. The interview went well, but the center's director, Mrs. Chen, had one concern. "We love your enthusiasm," she said, "but we require all our staff to have CPR and first aid certification. Do you have those?" Hannah's heart sank. "No, not yet," she admitted. The certification courses weren't expensive, but with no income, even a small expense seemed impossible. When she returned home and shared the news, Patricia immediately brightened. "Oh, is that all? I think I know just the solution." The next day, Patricia made a few phone calls to old friends. By that afternoon, she had arranged for Hannah to take the necessary courses at a reduced rate, offering to barter her own services, teaching art at the community center in exchange. As Hannah threw her arms around Patricia in gratitude, Howard circled above them, calling out, "Family, family," making Bella giggle from her playmat. However, their joy was interrupted by an unexpected visitor. Through the window, they saw Mrs. Reynolds marching up the front walk, a determined expression on her face and a stack of papers in her hand. "I've brought some concerning information to your attention," Mrs. Reynolds announced as soon as Patricia opened the door. She thrust forward a printout of a news article about the mall incident. "Did you know your tenant was investigated by Child Services?" Before Patricia could respond, Howard landed on the doorframe, his feathers puffed up in protective mode. "Family safe, baby safe," he declared firmly. Mrs. Reynolds stepped back, startled by Howard's intervention. "I'm just concerned for your welfare," she insisted. "Taking in strangers, turning your home into some sort of charity case." Patricia drew herself up to her full height, her voice firm but kind. "Mrs. Reynolds, I appreciate your concern, but my family's welfare is exactly what I'm looking after. Yes, I know about the mall incident. I was there. I saw a young mother make a mistake, learn from it, and work tirelessly to be better. What I didn't see was anyone else offering to help her succeed." Howard, still perched above them, added his own commentary. "Love family, help family." Mrs. Reynolds opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. Something in Patricia's steady gaze and Howard's protective posture made her reconsider her position. With a slight huff, she turned and walked away, though not without a backward glance that suggested this wouldn't be the last they heard from her. Inside, Hannah had heard everything. She stood in the hallway, holding Bella close, her expression a mixture of gratitude and worry. "Maybe she's right," she whispered. "Maybe I'm just causing trouble for you." Patricia crossed the room and wrapped both Hannah and Bella in a warm embrace. "Nonsense. You're giving me exactly what I needed, a purpose, joy, and a chance to be part of a family again. Don't let anyone make you doubt your place here." Howard flew to join them, landing gently on Bella's carrier. The baby reached up to pat his feathers, and he bent down to touch his beak to her nose, causing her to burst into delighted giggles. As Patricia watched them, she realized that sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones we create ourselves, bound not by blood but by choice and love. Their unusual household might raise eyebrows, but it was filled with more love and support than many traditional families could claim. That evening, as they sat together in the living room, Hannah practicing her CPR techniques on a dummy borrowed from the community center, while Howard demonstrated his own version of rescue breathing, mainly consisting of gentle air puffs and encouraging words, Patricia felt a deep sense of contentment. They were more than just people sharing a house. They were a family, brought together by circumstance but bound by choice. And no amount of neighborhood gossip or raised eyebrows could change that fact. Autumn arrived, painting the neighborhood in vibrant shades of red and gold. Hannah had successfully completed her certification courses and started her new job at the daycare center. Bella, now crawling everywhere, had become Howard's constant shadow, following the patient Parrot as he walked along the floor, occasionally stopping to offer her toys or gentle words of encouragement. One crisp morning, as Patricia prepared breakfast, she heard Howard's alarmed cry from the living room. "Hot! Hot! Baby! Hot!" She rushed in to find Howard frantically fanning his wings over Bella, who was flushed and listless on her playmat. Patricia quickly scooped up the baby, feeling the heat radiating from her small body. Bella's first serious fever had struck, and it was climbing rapidly. "Hi, Hannah," Patricia called upstairs, where the young mother was getting ready for work. "Come quickly." Hannah raced down, her hair half-brushed, and took one look at her daughter's flushed face before her own turned pale. "She was fine when I fed her this morning," she said, voice trembling as she took Bella from Patricia. Howard, still agitated, flew circles around them, alternating between "hot, hot," and "help, baby." "We need to get her to the doctor," Patricia said firmly, already reaching for her car keys. "Call the daycare center, they'll understand." The waiting room at the pediatrician's office was crowded, but Howard's presence, Patricia had insisted on bringing him, created enough of a stir that they were seen quickly. Dr. Roberts, a kind-faced woman in her 40s, raised an eyebrow at the concerned Parrot perched on Patricia's shoulder, but focused on examining Bella. "It's an ear infection," she diagnosed, gently touching the baby's reddened ear. "Quite common at this age, but this one's aggressive. We'll start her on antibiotics right away." Hannah's face fell at the mention of medication. Patricia knew she was calculating costs in her head. The new job's insurance hadn't kicked in yet. Before Hannah could speak, Patricia stepped forward. "We'll take care of whatever she needs," she said firmly, leaving no room for argument. The next few days were difficult. Bella was miserable, crying almost constantly, her fever stubborn despite the medication. Hannah took time off work, worried about her daughter, but also about her new position. Through it all, Howard proved to be an unexpected source of comfort. He learned to recognize when Bella's medicine was due, calling out "medicine time" with clockwork precision. During the long nights, he would sing soft lullabies, his gentle voice soothing the feverish baby when nothing else seemed to help. One particularly rough night, as Hannah paced the floor with a crying Bella, Howard flew to the kitchen and returned with a teething ring from the refrigerator, carefully carrying it in his beak. The cool ring provided immediate relief to the uncomfortable baby, and Hannah burst into tears of gratitude. "How does he always know exactly what she needs?" she asked Patricia, who was preparing cool compresses. "Howard has a special gift," Patricia replied, watching as the Parrot flew back and forth, bringing different toys to try to distract Bella. "He sees with his heart as much as his eyes." As Bella's fever finally broke and she began to recover, Hannah received an unexpected call from Mrs. Chen at the daycare center. Instead of the reprimand she feared for missing work, she received praise. "Taking care of your sick child shows exactly the kind of dedication and caring we want in our staff," Mrs. Chen explained. "In fact, we'd like to offer you additional training to become a lead teacher in our infant room." The news brought happy tears to Hannah's eyes. It wasn't just a job anymore. It was the beginning of a career, a chance to build a stable future for Bella. That evening, as they celebrated with a simple dinner, Howard performed his newest trick, carefully picking up pieces of his fruit and offering them to a now giggling Bella. The baby's fever was gone, replaced by her usual sunny smile. Patricia watched them, her heart full. The past few days had proved what she already knew. They were stronger together. Each crisis, each challenge, only served to bind them more tightly as a family. A knock at the door interrupted their peaceful moment. To everyone's surprise, it was Mrs. Reynolds, looking somewhat uncomfortable but holding a covered dish. I saw you all had a rough few days," she said hesitantly. "My grandmother's chicken soup recipe always helped when my children were sick." Howard, who had been watching suspiciously from his perch, suddenly called out, "Welcome, family!" Mrs. Reynolds' face softened at the parrot's greeting. "How you know?" she said, setting the soup on the counter. "I may have been too quick to judge. It's clear there's a lot of love in this house." As they invited Mrs. Reynolds to join them for dinner, Patricia realized that their unusual family wasn't just healing itself. It was helping heal their community's prejudices too, one small gesture at a time. Later that night, as quiet settled over the house, Patricia found Hannah in the nursery watching Bella sleep peacefully in her crib. Howard was perched on the rail, his head tucked under his wing but still facing the baby, ever the vigilant guardian. "Thank you," Hannah whispered to Patricia, "for everything." Patricia wrapped an arm around the young woman's shoulders. "That's what family does," she replied simply. As winter approached, bringing with it shorter days and chilly winds, life in Patricia's home had fallen into a comfortable rhythm. Bella, now pulling herself up and taking tentative steps while holding on to furniture, had become more adventurous in her explorations. Howard had adapted to her increased mobility by developing an elaborate system of warnings and encouragements. "Careful, careful," he would call when she wobbled, and "good girl," when she successfully navigated a particularly challenging stretch between the coffee table and the sofa. One morning, as snow fell softly outside, Patricia was helping Hannah decorate their first Christmas tree together when they heard Howard's excited chattering from the playroom. "Walk, baby, walk. Come see." They rushed to the doorway just in time to witness a milestone moment. Bella, standing unassisted in the middle of the room, took her first independent steps. Howard hopped along beside her, his presence seeming to give her confidence as she wobbled forward. "That's it, sweetheart," Hannah encouraged, tears of joy streaming down her face as she recorded the moment on her phone. "Da come to Mama." Bella, concentrating hard, managed 3 more steps before plopping down on her bottom. Rather than crying, she giggled, especially when Howard immediately presented her with her favorite stuffed elephant as a reward. "I can't believe you caught her first steps," Hannah said to Howard, who puffed up with pride. "You really are the best baby monitor ever." The moment was interrupted by another knock at the door. Patricia opened it to find a courier holding a certified letter. As she signed for it, she noticed Hannah's face had gone pale. "What is it, dear?" Patricia asked, concerned. Hannah's hands trembled as she held the letter. "It's from Bella's father's lawyer. He's requesting visitation rights." The room fell silent except for Bella's happy babbling as she practiced standing up again. Howard, sensing the tension, flew to Hannah's shoulder and gently preened her hair, his way of offering comfort. "I didn't think he even knew about her," Hannah whispered. "I haven't heard from him since before she was born." "Why now?" Patricia guided Hannah to sit down, while Howard entertained Bella to keep her from noticing her mother's distress. "What do you want to do?" Patricia asked gently. "I don't know," Hannah admitted. "Part of me thinks Bella deserves to know her father, but he abandoned us. He didn't care when I told him I was pregnant. He's never sent a single dollar for support or even asked how she was doing." Patricia nodded thoughtfully. "Well, first things first. We'll need to talk to a lawyer ourselves. You don't have to face this alone." That afternoon, while Bella napped under Howard's watchful eye, Patricia made some calls to her contacts in the legal community. By evening, they had an appointment with a well-respected family law attorney who agreed to take their case at a reduced rate. The meeting with the lawyer, Ms. Thompson, revealed some surprising information. It seemed Bella's father, James Carter, had recently inherited a substantial sum from his grandfather, and certain family members were pressuring him to do right by his child, though whether this was motivated by genuine concern or public image remained unclear. He has certain rights as the biological father, Mrs. Thompson explained. But his complete absence until now will work in your favor, Hannah. We can push for supervised visitation only and make sure any arrangement includes formal child support payments. Over the next few weeks, as legal negotiations began, Hannah struggled with her emotions. She threw herself into her work at the daycare center, earning praise from Mrs. Chen for her dedication and creativity with the children. At home, she spent every free moment with Bella, as if afraid someone might take her daughter away. Howard seemed to sense her anxiety and adapted his routine accordingly. He began announcing "Mama home" whenever Hannah returned from work, leading Bella to crawl excitedly to the door for greeting hugs. He learned to say "love you lots," a phrase Hannah often said to Bella, and would repeat it whenever Hannah seemed particularly stressed. One evening, as they sat in the living room watching Bella play, Hannah voiced her deepest fear. "What if he tries to take her away from me, from us?" Patricia reached over and squeezed her hand. "That won't happen. You're an excellent mother, Hannah. You've built a stable, loving home for Bella. No judge would disrupt that." Howard, who had been showing Bella how to stack blocks, mainly by pointing with his beak and saying "here" and "up," flew over to join them. "Family stay together," he declared firmly, making both women smile despite their worries. The first supervised visit with James was scheduled for a Saturday morning at a neutral location. Hannah was a bundle of nerves as she dressed Bella in her prettiest outfit. Howard, breaking his usual rule about staying with Patricia, insisted on coming along, though he would have to wait in the car. As they pulled up to the Family Services Center, Hannah took a deep breath. Patricia, who had driven them, turned to face her. "Remember, we're right here if you need us. Just text and we'll come right in." Howard added his own encouragement. "Brave mama, good mama." The visit lasted an hour. When Hannah emerged with Bella, her expression was complicated, a mixture of relief and lingering anxiety. James had been awkward with Bella, clearly unprepared for the realities of interacting with a toddler. He had brought expensive toys, but seemed at a loss when Bella was more interested in playing peekaboo with her hands. "He's not a bad person," Hannah said on the drive home, while Bella dozed in her car seat. "Just completely unprepared for being a father. He admitted the whole thing was his mother's idea. She wants a grandchild to show off to her country club friends." Patricia nodded wisely. "And how do you feel about that?" "Honestly? Relieved? I was so scared he would try to take her away, but I don't think he really wants to be a full-time father. He talked about setting up a trust fund for her education, which would be wonderful, but I think he'll be content with occasional visits." Howard, who had been unusually quiet, suddenly spoke up. "Baby safe? Family safe?" "Yes," Hannah agreed, reaching back to stroke his feathers. "Our family is safe." Spring brought new beginnings to the household. Bella's second birthday was approaching, and the little girl who had once been saved by a vigilant parrot was now a bustling toddler, filling the house with laughter and energy. Howard had become not just her guardian, but her first teacher, helping her learn new words and showing remarkable patience as she attempted to mimic his phrases. "Color blue," Howard would say, pointing to objects with his beak, and Bella would toddle after him, repeating "boo" with enthusiasm. The legal arrangements with James had settled into a comfortable routine. He visited once a month, contributed to a college fund, and seemed content with his limited role in Bella's life. The trust fund he had set up would ensure her education, but it was the daily love and care from her unconventional family that truly enriched her life. Hannah had flourished in her role at the daycare center. Mrs. Chen had promoted her to lead teacher in the infant room, and she was taking online courses in early childhood education during her evening hours. Patricia would often find her studying late at night, with Howard perched nearby, helpfully turning pages with his beak. One sunny morning, as they prepared for Bella's birthday celebration, Patricia received an unexpected call. It was from the local news station. They wanted to do a follow-up story on Howard, the heroic parrot who had saved a baby's life in a mall parking lot. "It's been over a year since the incident," the reporter explained, "and we'd love to show how that moment of heroism led to such a beautiful family story." Patricia looked at Hannah questioningly. They had avoided publicity since the initial incident, preferring to keep their family life private. But now, with everything settled and their bonds stronger than ever, perhaps it was time to share their story. Maybe it could help other people, Hannah suggested thoughtfully. Show them that family isn't just about blood relations, but about love and choosing to be there for each other. Howard, who had been listening intently, added his opinion: share love, help others. The birthday party itself was a joyful celebration. Mrs. Chen and several teachers from the daycare center attended, along with Mrs. Reynolds, who had become a close friend and occasional babysitter. Even James came for a short while, bringing an extravagant gift, but looking slightly out of place among the intimate gathering. The news crew filmed discreetly, capturing moments that showcased their unique family dynamic. Howard helping Bella blow out her candles from a safe distance, Patricia and Hannah working together to serve cake, and the natural way they all interacted with each other. The reporter, touched by what she witnessed, asked Patricia what made their unusual family work so well. "Child love doesn't follow rules or expectations," Patricia responded, watching as Howard demonstrated to Bella how to properly eat cake, though he preferred his fruits and vegetables. Sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones that come together by chance and stay together by choice. Hannah added her own thoughts. Howard didn't just save Bella that day in the parking lot, he helped save all of us. He showed us that heroes come in unexpected forms, and that sometimes the family you need isn't the one you're born into, but the one that chooses you. As the party wound down and guests began to leave, a tired but happy Bella curled up in her favorite spot, a special cushion next to Howard's perch. The parrot gently covered her with his wing, just as he had done countless times before. "Family love," he said softly, using one of his latest phrases. "Yes, Howard," Patricia agreed, putting an arm around Hannah as they watched the touching scene. "Family love indeed." Later that evening, after Bella was tucked into bed and Hannah had retired to study, Patricia sat in her garden with Howard. The stars were just beginning to appear in the darkening sky, and the spring air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers. "You know, Howard," she mused, "when George passed away, I thought my family days were over. I never imagined that one parrot's heroic act would lead to all of this." Howard nestled against her cheek, his usual gesture of affection. "Happy family," he said simply. Patricia smiled, remembering the lonely days before Hannah and Bella came into their lives, the uncertainty when they first moved in, and the joy that had grown with each passing day. They had faced challenges together: Bella's first illness, the legal issues with James, the neighborhood gossip, and emerged stronger for it. The news story aired a week later, touching hearts across the community. Letters began arriving from other unconventional families, sharing their own stories of love that transcended traditional boundaries. Their story had given others hope and courage to embrace their own unique family situations. But more importantly, their daily life continued its beautiful rhythm. Each morning still began with Howard's cheerful wake-up calls. Each day brought new words for Bella to learn, new challenges for Hannah to tackle in her studies, and new moments of joy for Patricia to treasure. They had all saved each other in different ways. Howard's heroism had simply been the catalyst that brought them together. The real miracle was in the 1,000 small moments that followed. The shared meals, the bedtime stories, the celebrations and challenges, the tears and laughter that had transformed 4 different souls into one unshakable family. As spring bloomed into summer, their story continued to unfold, not in dramatic rescues or public celebrations, but in the quiet, precious moments of everyday life. They had learned that sometimes the greatest adventures aren't about where you go, but about finding where you truly belong. And in the end, that's what Howard had really done. Not just saved a baby from danger, but helped create a family where everyone could flourish, bound together by love, choice, and the understanding that sometimes the most precious gifts come with feathers. "The end," Howard would say at bedtime after Patricia finished reading stories to Bella. But for their family, it wasn't an ending at all. It was simply another beautiful beginning. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the world of captivating stories. I trust you found today's narrative as engaging as I did. If you enjoyed this exploration into fascinating and compelling narratives, kindly indicate your appreciation by liking this video. Are you watching on mobile? Show your appreciation with a double tap for hype. For more captivating stories and journeys into the heart of compelling storytelling, please subscribe to the channel and activate notifications so you don't miss a single upload. Your thoughts and interpretations are most welcome. Please share your perspectives on today's story in the comments below. And if you believe others would find this content engaging, please consider sharing the video with your network. Until our next journey into the world of captivating tales, I bid you farewell.